Hey folks, welcome back to the channel, your home for all content Lord of the Rings home. We finally have details on what Chapter 4 is going to entail, what is the Balrog fight going to look like, and when it's going to be released. That's this article I have here. Let's just get right into it. Greetings, Ring Bears. Chapter 4 of the Mines of Moria raid is coming to the Lord of the Rings Heroes of Middle-earth. Chapter 4, A Shadow and a Flame, will be available in your games on October 17th. That is a week from today. It's obviously subject to a little bit of change, so if they, when they're rolling it out, if they see something that they need to fix, that might get pushed back a little bit. But you can maybe plan around October 17th with your guild. That's 1 week. That's very close. We've reached the climax of our story in the Mines of Moria. Our brave fellowship has battled countless foul orcs, cave trolls to boot, but now the ultimate adversary. From the deep in the mountains comes Durin's Bane, an ancient foe of Shadow and Flame, a Balrog. I might just use Balrog and Durin's Bane sort of interchangeably here, just a heads up. Durin's Bane is a little bit of a mouthful. Might shorten it to DB. I guess we know where DB Cooper ended up. Anyway, that's a joke 3 people are gonna get. As per previous chapters, guilds will need to score a total of 17 million points in order to progress onto the final chapter of the raid, Chapter 4. I'm a really big fan of that. 17 mil across the board to go from one chapter to the next. Makes things easy, makes things simple. So this information on abilities, probably like the ability percentages, is based on difficulty 3 and will differ, I guess, based on, difficulty 2 and difficulty 1 are not going to be as bad, as you'll see. Let's go through the scoring. Scoring rules are as follows. Gain 100 points for every percentage of health lost by DB. Gain 500 points for each Bane cleansed or resisted by an ally. That's massive. Cleansers are going to be super, super important. I've been saying it. This sort of Mines of Moria raid has a theme, and that theme is sustainability and cleanses. You need it for basically all of the chapters. Gain 15,000 points for flinching DB. Gain 2,500 points when Durin's Bane exits flame form or shadow form. So just right off the bat, this appears to me you want to be flinching Durin's Bane. That's how you're going to get the majority of his points. And then you're going to get a little bit more points by doing some cleanses, which you're going to need to do anyway. And then obviously, this is a little bit of a DPS check, kind of like the cave troll in that way. And when he exits flame form or shadow form. Okay, so we're going to be bopping around here. I'm going to go kind of between his forms and then the abilities he has in his forms. We finally meet the dark and fiery denizen of Moria, the Balrog known as Durin's Bane. His passive abilities, he's immune to stun, blind, burning, bleed, and poison. What that means is that the tactics that you used on Chapter 2 to bring the cave troll down, basically chunking his health with health-based percent Banes, no longer work. What he is not immune to, though, are things like slow, weak-minded, disabled, disrupted, dazed, I guess, which actually dazed might be pretty good now that I'm thinking about it. Lowering his focus by 50%. Things expose. I think expose will also probably be a pretty big one. So basically, he's immune to abilities that would make it so that he can't hit somebody and that would chunk his health down quite a bit. When this character reaches 1 health, lose all turn meter, remove all boons and banes. Nice of them to include a shout out to my podcast with Torm DK. Appreciate that. On self, lose 5 stacks of flame form, shadow form. On self, gain 1 stack of enrage and become flinched. I think the enrage will probably just be similar to what it was for the cave troll. They don't have details for it here, but he gains some extra amount of damage and resistance and that sort of stuff. When he's flinched, immune to all banes and turn meter removal, gain 25% turn meter and heal for 25% of this character's max health at the end of any character's turn. On reaching 100% turn meter, return to normal form. Okay, so the way I'm reading this is think about like when you topple the cave troll, he gets 25% health, right? So right off the bat, when he gets flinched, he gets 25% of his max health. He also gets 25% turn meter. At least that's my understanding. Because he would just immediately be at 0% health otherwise. So every time one of your characters goes, he's going to get an additional 25% turn meter. So this is kind of a little bit of time to get your skills off of cooldown, to do maybe some support abilities, get some healing, that sort of stuff going, and then it's back to DPS check. One thing I want to kind of point out here, though, is that once he reaches his normal form, it doesn't have like a little line in here that says he still returns his health to 100%. I guess we'll see if that's the case. If it's not, what that means is that you could continue DPSing while he's in this form, kind of for free, and then he has less health. No, I take that back. He'll still get to 100% turn meter. It's just a matter of how many of your character's turns you're going to get in. Okay. We're figuring some things out on the fly. Creature of Shadow... Actually, before we do that, let's go down and look at his normal form combat abilities. Branding Iron. Attack the target enemy for 220% damage and inflict burning for 2 turns. If the target already had burning, gain 25% turn meter. This attack ignores taunt and provoke. So I think what's specific to Chapter 3 here is likely just the percentages in damage and not like any of this other stuff. So basically, his basic attack ignores taunt and provoke. And then if they already have burning, he's going to get 25% turn meter, and that's going to add up really, really fast. So characters that apply fortitude, I mean, Gondor's looking to be really, really good here with immunity. Rivendell's looking to be pretty good. But you basically want to be able to get rid of all of these Banes, and so cleansers are going to be a must. Smoldering Wave. Attack all enemies for 190% damage and inflict burning and expose for 2 turns. That's crazy. This attack cannot be evaded. Gain 2 stacks of flame form. Sightless Dread. Dispel 2 boons from all enemies. Inflict blind for 1 turn. On 3 random enemies, this attack cannot be evaded. So he's handing out blinds, which is important for Shadow Form. We'll get into that. He's also dispelling boons, which is also important for Shadow Form, which we will get into. And then Shadow Assault. Attack the target enemy for 340% damage and inflict disrupted and disable, so you can't gain boons and you can't do an attack like a special attack. Inflict blind for 2 turns. 2-turn blind. Oh man. Remove 1 stamina from each of the target's abilities and reduce their turn meter by 50%. Gain 5 stacks of Shadow Form. Wow. That's insane. So that's like his big attack here. That will basically just like take a character out. That's pretty big. So again, if he gains 20 stacks of either flame or shadow form, he gets to move into kind of one of these next forms here. Here's how he gets there. Let's talk about Shadow first. Creature of Shadow on evade gains 3 stacks of Shadow Form and 20% turn meter. So he's giving himself turn meter when he's hitting with his basic and the character already has burning, but also when he's getting evaded. So Eagle Eye is probably going to be very important, especially with the amount of blinds that he is handing out, which makes sense considering Lord Balin's leadership ability. Rangers might be pretty good here. I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not sure you want to break up Rivendell, but maybe. This is so big. 3 stacks of Shadow Form, gain 20% turn meter. He's getting himself turn meter all the time. One thing I want to kind of point out, though, is that it's basically not normal form, then flame form, then shadow form. It's not like one after the other. He's getting stacks of flame form and shadow form simultaneously, right? And so he's going to be able to kind of switch in and out routinely, depending on essentially how your run goes. On 20 stacks, he basically takes a turn, goes into shadow form, and he does blackout immediately. He also heals himself for 30% of this character's max health, so it's going to be harder to flinch him. Consume all stacks of shadow form, 5 stacks of flame form, and then he gets new stuff, but he's immune to all banes in both shadow form and flame form. And then when this character reaches 1 health, lose all turn meter, remove all boons and banes on self, lose 5 stacks of flame form and shadow form, and gain 1 stack of enraged and become flinched. So the way you get him out of... One of the ways you get him out of this shadow form is by getting his HP to 0, or 1 rather. Let's go to shadow form. Attack the target enemy for 340% damage, dispel 1 boon. If the target has shadow beckons, inflict blind for 1 turn. This attack cannot be evaded. Blackout. This is the move he does as soon as he gets into shadow form. Dispel 1 boon from all enemies, then inflict 1 stack of shadow beckons on each enemy that doesn't have a boon. Gain 10% turn meter for each enemy that was inflicted with shadow beckons by this attack. Gain 2 stacks of counterattack. This attack cannot be evaded. So it's, yeah, used upon entering and then periodically within shadow form. So basically, you need to have boons on your teams, which I think puts a significant disadvantage for shadow-based teams. It's mostly the light-based teams that put boons on themselves. And he's immune to a lot of banes as well. So I'm curious to see how shadow-based teams are going to work. I'm not too confident in their abilities at the moment, I would say. But basically, anytime he applies a blind and you're missing on him, he's kind of building up this shadow form stacks, and also, I mean, he's just going to ruin you. Gains 10% turn meter for each enemy that was inflicted with Shadow Beckon. So he's also just got a lot of turn meter sort of manipulation stuff. So when he's in shadow form, he's giving himself, if every character you have on the field has Shadow Beckons because you don't have any boons, he immediately gets 50% turn meter. And then he's going to do a lot of damage and continue to spell boons with his basic. Let's talk about Embrace Darkness. Attack the target enemy for 1700% damage. Whoa. If the target has Shadow Beckons, instead deal a fatal blow, transform into normal form. This attack cannot be evaded. So you get Shadow Beckons basically if they don't have a boon. So he's dispelling his boons with his basic, and he does this big attack when he first comes in. And so you basically need to make sure that you can get rid of the Shadow Beckons. What's not clear to me is whether Shadow Beckons is a bane or if it's like one of those blue ability markers, which you couldn't cleanse. The cleansing, if it is a bane, cleansing is going to be massively, massively important here. And this makes sense with why Lord Ballin has the can survive fatal blow sort of situation, right? Because he gets a fatal blow. So ideally what you're doing while he's in shadow form is getting his health down to 0 and flinching him. But I think what's more likely to happen is that after a set amount of turns, which he's going to be taking many of, he is going to do this big attack. This already seems like a fatal blow, 1700% damage. But if they have Shadow Beckons, then they're going to deal a fatal blow. My guess is that he's also going to target somebody who already has Shadow Beckons. Okay, let's go up to Flame Form here. When an enemy takes damage from burning, gain 2 stacks of Flame Form and 10% turn meter. So he's getting stacks of Flame Form when somebody is taking burning damage, and then also I don't think he has an ability that gives him, oh, it does, Smoldering Wave. His normal form will also gain 2 stacks of Flame Form. Off the bat here, it does kind of seem like he's going to be entering shadow form more often, but it's unclear to me. I guess we'll just have to see how it plays. He also inflicts burning with his basic, right? Okay. But he gains 2 stacks of Flame Form, 10% turn meter. On reaching 20 stacks, he takes a turn, enters Flame Form, heals himself for 30% of the character's max health, basically the same thing. Gets rid of all stacks of Flame Form, 5 stacks of Shadow Form, and he's got new availables. On this turn, if this character has no stacks of Incinerate, transform into normal form. So that's how he goes from Flame Form into normal form. So for Shadow Form, he either uses his big ability or you flinch him. On Flame Form, he either loses stacks of Incinerate or you flinch him. He's immune to all banes in both Shadow Form and Flame Form. What kind of abilities does he have in Flame Form? Infernal Ignition. Attack all enemies for 160% damage and gain 12 stacks of Incinerate. This attack cannot be counterattacked, so he only does this once. He gives himself 12 stacks of Incinerate. Attack all enemies for 200% damage and inflict burning for 1 turn. Consume 1 stacks of Incinerate. And then Incinerate it empowers abilities on Durin's Bane. Each hit removes 1 stack. I'm curious to see if it does anything else, or basically this is just sort of the ammo count he has to be able to use Hellfire. But he basically has an AoE that inflicts burning for 1 turn. And if he has 12 stacks of Incinerate, then he's going to be doing this Hellfire thing 12 times. That's a lot of AoE damage. So you really, I guess, want to avoid Flame Form here. Maybe this is why you really want armor and protection. It's just because he's tossing out so much damage. I'll be curious to see if Incinerate is like a buff he puts on himself. Maybe you can dispel it yourself. That would be really good. We'll see. This is pretty big. So that's a lot of damage. He's basically got a lot of damage in each of these forms here. You really want to be able to manage your him going into flame form and him going into shadow form. And then when they're in that forms, I feel like you don't want to get out of their forms either by getting out of incinerate stacks or with him doing his big attack here, embrace darkness. Instead, you want to flinch him. So now that I'm kind of thinking about that, maybe the best way, I guess it's all going to depend on how much HP the Balrog has, right? And like how easy it is to get him down. But maybe something you want to do is like save some big abilities when you know he's about to go into like shadow or flame form, right? He does heal himself for 30% of his health, but save some abilities and then DPS him down as quick as you possibly can. He gets flinched, he comes out of flame form or shadow form, and you don't have to deal with the consequences of all this sort of stuff. I mean, we're not going to know. This is pretty complicated, and we're not going to really know how this all works together until we get in there and play it. I definitely plan on playing it when my guild starts a raid. Sometime next week, we should be able to get in there. This is very exciting. It looks very difficult. Definitely a big ending and like a big bad boss to end the Mines of Moria raid. So that's good. I am a little bit worried about the performance of shadow teams and how well they're going to do, because it seems a lot of the tools that they normally have are sort of neutralized. But with that, that's all from me. Thanks for watching and take it easy.